Hi, I'm Jay from Real Street Performance. Today we're here with the Valley Fever Streamliner. This is a very unique race car. This is a purpose-built vehicle for going fast in a straight line at the Bonneville Salt Flats. It's powered by a 2JZ engine. There's a lot of unique engineering that goes into a vehicle like this. We're gonna get some of these panels off, give you a look around, and kind of go through the discovery process of what it takes to have a car that goes over 300 miles an hour.
So anyway, congratulations.
Thank you.
2 years, 2 steps and a half. Thanks for all your help for both these cars.
Today we're here with Brad Bosworth, Valley Fever Streamliner. Brad built this car at home in his garage. He kind of went to Bonneville, a dream was born, he went home, and this is what he ended up creating. It's a very unique profile vehicle. So when you start at the nose of the vehicle, it's shaped like an airplane or a rocket. As you work your way back, the 2 front wheels are in line. As you go back further, there's a large water tank that's pressurized for engine cooling with 2 fire bottles mounted on top of that water tank. Behind that, you have the driver's cockpit. There's not a lot of space in there. Once you get strapped into the car and they put the canopy on, you really feel like you're tied to a rocket and you're looking down this long, straight course. And it's a tremendously intense view out of the cockpit of a vehicle like this. Behind that, you have a reservoir for an air-to-water intercooler. So the turbocharged air that comes out of the turbocharger is cooled by ice water. Behind that, 2JZ engine, TH400 transmission, and a quick change rear end. Behind the rear end, 2 parachutes, low-speed chute, high-speed chute, fuel tank, and puke tank for the engine. So we're gonna go ahead and get the panels off this vehicle, give you a closer look at all the unique engineering and systems that go into having a Streamliner. So one of the things that makes a Streamliner different than what they would call a Lakester, when you look at the bodies of a Lakester and a Streamliner, they're similar, but a Lakester has the wheels on the outside of the body. A Streamliner has the wheels on the inside of a body. So these wheels being inline, tucked, they both steer. So there's a lot of geometry that goes into getting movement from the steering wheel to something that functions correctly up front. And you also have a certain amount of opposite toe to get the vehicle to track straight, because you wouldn't want the nose to be nervous in the vehicle as you go 200, 300, or 400 miles an hour. So very unique engineering that goes into the front end. There is no suspension on the nose of the car. It's just a rigid nose. So if the course is bumpy, you are gonna feel that. As you go behind the front tires, you have this water tank. Pretty big water tank, and this is just for engine cooling. It does have a pitcock on top of it that you pressurize before a run. So if you go back into early IMSA racing, one of the tricks they were doing was pressurizing the cooling system so it forces the coolant up against the metal inside of the engine to try to drag more heat out of the engine. So then you have your fire bottles. Again, there's 2 fire bottles. One of them is for the driver's compartment and the other one is for the engine compartment. One of the most dangerous things about a vehicle like this is the engine is behind you. So if you have an engine fire and you don't know about it, and then you open your parachutes, it will then burn the parachutes off the car, and now you just have a projectile headed down course with really no way to slow it down. So it's a neat vehicle at speed, but you have to understand that it is also a very dangerous vehicle at speed. Behind that, we have the driver's compartment. I'm 5'10", and I'm about as tall as you can fit in this compartment. When you sit in the car, your tailbone is on the floor pan of the car, and your head is kind of like lodged up against the roll bar. and then the men come and they strap you into the car, and as they compress your spine, you can get a little wiggle room up top, but it is a tight fit in there. You also have to be able to perform a bailout, so with all of your safety gear on, you've got to be able to get yourself out of the car in a hurry in front of the SCTA tech to make sure that you're not going to get stuck in the car if there is an incident like a fire. Behind the compartment, you have a large water tank for, again, your air to water intercooler. So we're going to pack this thing with ice and water in an effort to keep the charge temps under control as the vehicle goes down the course. Behind that, 2JZ engine. It's got a large 3-inch drive Mazir water pump. It's got a daily dry sump, Mazworks 12 injector plenum that we're currently only using 6 injectors on because we're still on gasoline records. All the machine work was done by Mazworks, and we assembled the engine here at Real Street. So as far as the engine itself goes, Brian Crower has been a really big help with getting this thing out to the salt and having an engine to race. We have Brian Crower connecting rods, we have Brian Crower camshafts, and Brian Crower valve springs. So they're kind of the majority of the sponsorship on the engine is through Brian Crower. I have been using a Manley Turbo Tough piston, really tough part. We did development work with Manley years ago, and it's a really strong piston, and I feel comfortable running these components, you know, wide open throttle for 4 to 5 miles. So behind the engine is the turbo system. The headers and system were fabricated by Steve Watt at Maxwell Engineering. He's also the crew chief behind the Speed Demon. That's another very high-end streamliner that's in this space. That car has been over 470 miles an hour. It's an incredible piece of hardware. He helped us out, fabbed up the turbo system. We are going to change to a Precision 6466. Right now it's got some turbochargers that we were kind of like thinking about doing some beta testing with and growing with, but when you look back and you look at all the success I've had with the Precision turbocharger and the fact that I only get a couple times a year at best to race a car like this, I just wanted to have a reliable, powerful turbocharger that I can count on. So these are coming off, the Precisions are going on, and we can just know that we'll have plenty of power on tap with two 64mm turbos on a 2JZ. Tucked behind the turbo system is the air-to-water intercooler core. So again, unlike the cars you see that there's kind of a radiator-looking intercooler on the front of the car, this is an air-to-water. So it has a water tank, a water pump, and ice water trying to pull the heat out of that charge temp as it leaves the turbocharger. Now, underneath the turbo system currently is a Turbo 400 trans. The problem that we have with that is the ratio steps. So you go from a 248 first, 148 second, 1-to-1 final, and in that is these very large engine speed drops. And when the car would shift from second gear to third gear, it goes back down to around 6,000 RPM, and it's just really hard on the engine parts. So we're gonna go to the Liberty 5-speed trans, tighter gear drops, more forward ratios, and helping that engine stay healthy and happy at a higher cycle speed. So instead of pulling from 8,800 down to 6,000, we're gonna have a lot better drops as we go down course. Then we get to the rear section. Again, tires are tucked in behind the body panels. These tires are now 30 inches tall. We had 28s on the car before, and the rear tires were starting to chunk. And one of the most dangerous situations in a streamliner is that you lose a tire, the car turns, and then it pencil rolls, and it sounds just like it is. It rolls like a pencil on a table, and things aren't good for the driver after that. We do have rear suspension, Winner's quick change rear end, so it's a highly adjustable set of gear ratios in the rear end. You can just change gears under the rear cover to a fairly infinite set of ratios. So if you need to make a gearing change based off of traction or trying to achieve even a higher speed, right now we're going to be geared for around 420 miles an hour with some tire slip. So that's kind of the goal of this next chapter with this vehicle, is to break the 400-mile-an-hour mark. Behind the tires, you have a fuel tank, puke tank, and 2 parachutes. Again, you have a high-speed parachute and a low-speed parachute, and that's what you're going to do to slow the car down once you're finished with your run. Scrub a lot of speed. Once the car's down to 60 or 70 miles an hour, there is brakes available on the car, but you don't use the brakes until you're going pretty slow. We do have this wing. Some very intelligent people are around this car. A team of really great people surround this entire vehicle. And one of the suggestions that we heard last year was that the wing is a little short for the length of the vehicle. So in the future, this wing will get taller, but given this season and the time we have left, the wing will stay the same. So for the rear of the vehicle, again, you have the twin parachutes. So you have your high-speed parachute. That one's gonna come out first. Car slows down, you can open your low-speed parachute. You have a nub here. This is where the push truck is gonna push. So when you're at a dead stop in this vehicle, you don't just accelerate from the starting line. The average new diesel truck, 1,000 foot-pounds of torque, four-wheel drive, they push a board up against this thing and they really push you as fast as they can to 70, 80 miles an hour, where the car can start to accelerate itself away from the truck. So it's a very unique experience, very unique ride. I don't know that there's anything else like it. So as far as the driver's compartment goes, it's pretty tight in here. You have a Motec C127 dash, we've got a Motec M150 ECU up there on the firewall. You have low speed parachute, high speed parachute, driver's fire system, engine compartment fire system. There is still a shifter in here for the TH400, but that's gonna go away. When we move to Liberty, we'll just have a push button shifter. And over on the left, you just have some toggle switches for the starter, the ignition, the intercooler, the cool shirt, and the ECU. The cool shirt is a really neat item. So the ice water that's in the intercooler tank to cool the turbocharged air also runs ice water over your body in a shirt. So you're sitting in the car sometimes for 25, 30 minutes before you get a run. It's very hot out there, and you can flick that cool shirt on and you just cool right off. You also have a fresh air tube. So it gets stuffy in here with the lid on. So you have a tube that's pumping air up into the helmet. And whether you're on the starting line and something else starts up that's maybe on methanol or nitromethane, you have access to some clean oxygen as you're sitting in the car waiting for your run. Not a lot of steering angle goes into this car. You're kind of going down the course, and if you need to make any corrections, you kind of bend which direction the car is going. There's no fast inputs. You want to be as smooth as possible, because at the rate of ground you're covering, once you get over that 200 or 300 mile an hour mark, you're just going for a ride. I hope you've enjoyed a look at a very unique race car. Stay tuned for future episodes. We're going to be making a fair share of changes to the vehicle in an attempt to go over 400 miles an hour this year. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. It's definitely a lot different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels a lot different than pretty much anything. It feels like a madman. The way that it shakes your head where you can't see, that's pretty cool.
Is it helmet touching the chassis?
No, but it just vibrates. You're like, it popped. I kind of cruised up in a boost, and it popped, and then the party was over. But I just was driving down the course, just kind of like
Get a feel.
la di da di da. What's for lunch?